Kitties are just cute. This is their destiny. Can't help it. No face. We have Squirrel, also a beautiful kitten. I went back for one day, subbing today, to my admin job at Manzana High School. Yeah. Interesting going back to anything. Instantly, all the problems of registration of a whole school were my problem for a full day. And a machine nearby would never quit beeping. The lady was so mad on the phone. I think this bookcase is just beautiful. I mean, there's a completely shelf-maxed, totally packed case of writing books. Books about writing, the craft, about reading also. Reference books as well. Even look at this beautiful selection of paperbacks about writing. Every time I look at this section, I'm going to read this whole section. With the paperback nonfiction section, it looks very interesting. What goes on there? There's some cool stuff here. Here too. I did some videos on these cases. Yeah. I frequently ask myself, what's the point of this channel? And what's the point of a book collection? I literally own more books than a person could ever read in a lifetime. When am I going to read all these novels and fiction? It's so many. There's just a lot of books in the world, and then it's even the small amount a person can own in the space they live in. This channel is like a silly, funny errand in a way. Describe a whole book collection. What's up with that? We're looking at this one now. The Books for Younger Readers case. Down there. Good old squirrel. Sweetest to be. With a very cool mother. Hi, Prisma. You have to pet Prisma or she's insulted. Wait, what is this just filming me, Beth? Oh, that's so nice. Thanks, kitty. Or I'm salty. My daughters have good design sensibilities. This cat does not approve. You licking me too? That's nice. Oh, wait, what? Now you're protesting. That's what I drew out from the case, from that next shelf of Books for Younger Readers. All the trade-sized paperbacks. A random crowd, but intended to be portable. And so representative of the choice and what was available to teenagers at their freest. I just love the portability of the trade-sized paperback. It's nice. It's not so small that you can't see the print, Let's see what we have here. This next book highlights a theme of some of these books in that it traumatized one of my children. This might have traumatized a couple of my children, but it really traumatized Willow. Willow got a complex from this book. She should not have heard this as young as she was, but her siblings were insisting on it, and Willow was like, no, I want to hear it too. Because it is a really compelling story. The last kids on a school bus, and they're like, why are we not getting dropped off? It also takes place in the Manzano Mountains and Albuquerque. And my kids were living in Albuquerque, and we read this. Lois Duncan's awesome. We became online friends later in her life, and I thought of her when her daughter's killer confessed after her death. Duncan used to live in Albuquerque, but left the town in disgust and horror after her daughter was killed here, randomly shot in traffic. She wrote two books about that. But she wrote these kinds of thriller novels, including I Know What You Did Last Summer, which has been loosely adapted into a movie franchise. I need to write an essay called I Still Don't Know What I Did Last Summer. I need to write it while the title still works. Missing was also published as Ransom. Killing Mr. Griffin, that was a famous one of hers. She also wrote Hotel for Dogs, which became a classic modern movie for the youth, beloved by my children. Duncan's a real unique person. She later in her life, she just kept updating her old books. She would like add cell phones and current trends in, and they do new covers. I remember I reviewed a collection of her writings for when she was young and was writing for like 17 magazine and places like that. I was sent a review copy and wrote a blurb about it somewhere. She's a very talented and thoughtful writer, and she's got a real knack. How she ended up writing these kinds of stories is kind of funny, because she also like wrote a book of lullabies with her daughter. And this one really did give my daughter Willow a complex for a while. She slept with the light on for, I'm not exaggerating, I don't think years, in part because of this book. And it's like, sorry, kid. I hate that happened to you. I think it happens to imaginative children, because I know I was scarred by the movie Anastasia. Now where I'm like, I think I'm on the side of the Russian Revolution over the Tsar. But watching that as a kid and seeing that family lined up and executed by soldiers that just came out of nowhere, I was like, that house kind of looks like ours, because we were living in this fancy home for my parents' religious work, 5 stories, like 100 years old in Austria. Really had secret tunnels underneath it. I'm not even kidding. My sibling and I explored it. Russia used it in some sort of official embassy-like militaristic way after the division of Vienna during World War II. After World War II. We have Coraline from Neil Gaiman. This is a good book. You know, Neil Gaiman has been thoroughly Me Too'd and is on everyone's bad list right now. But there's no question that on occasion he has been touched by conduits of genius and connected to archetypal, powerful storytelling. Other times I just am like, is this the same writer? It's like listening to the Mamas and the Papas. It's like, wow, this song is the best song I've ever heard in my life. I left my body. And then the next song is like an annoying show tune. I feel a little bit like that with Neil Gaiman's. My friend Tim Howard once said, yeah, no one goes from sucks to slave faster than the Moms and the Papas. Howard is a musician, Soltero. Look him up on Bandcamp. Great musician. But, you know, there's some Neil Gaiman books that I owned pre-Scandal, and like I would keep a copy of this. I would keep a copy of the Graveyard Book. I don't even know if we have the Graveyard Book anymore, but those are excellent. I had the opportunity recently to get all of Sandman, the Sandman by him, you know, illustrated by many, at a thrift store. I thought about it, but I don't know. Ultimately, there's a million other... Oh, American Gods. That's another Neil Gaiman one I just love. But those, I feel like, those must have been flukes or something, because then he would just write filler, like Fortunately the Milk. Unsatisfying on a bunch of levels. And anyway, Dave McKean. Yeah, and they did those great collaborations for younger readers, Wolves on the Walls, and there's one more. Yeah, I swapped my dad for 2 goldfish. It sucks when people get exposed as highly problematic, because it's like, man, you had a community around you. Like Dave McKean, you know, he was probably cool. My brother has shared a green room with Neil Gaiman before, and he said he always kind of felt wary of him. I don't know. Yeah. Sometimes people are like too cheerful and too friendly, and it's like, what are you hiding? Separating the art from the artist, that eternal debate. But I feel like with kids' books too, it's also complicated, because kids just love what they love, you know, and they don't want to know about Roald Dahl's personal life. And or whatever, Like, I don't know anything about Richard Adams, or many authors for that matter. The timeless classic novel of exile, courage, and survival. In fact, I think it's even more common with young writers for young people to know less about them. This basically is just like a great fantasy epic, like Lord of the Rings, but it's all rabbits, and it's a big journey. And I wish I had grown up with this. I grew up instead with The Animals of Farthing Wood, which is another animal exodus story, and maybe drew from this in some ways. It's a series of books, very well written. But I've read most of this to my kids, and then I think they kind of got tired of it, or we DNF'd it, or some flashy, bright object of a book caught our attention. But I keep it around. I've seen the movie before. I know it's got an amazing story. There's also a show based on it now, miniseries. This author, I just acquire books by when I see them because they're not that common anymore. They used to be more common. Here he's won some sort of award. Very honored. Because Annie Dillard mentions the book by him in her book, Holy the Firm. And I was trying to just know that text completely as like a literary experiment. And so I tried to track down every book mentioned in it. I don't know that I've ever found that book. At the moment, I don't really have a copy of Holy the Firm. Annie Dillard respects your prose enough to name drop you, then okay, cool. I've only gotten good recommends from her, honestly. Notes from a Bottle Found on the Beach at Carmel, I know about from her. And this great book about stained glass art from the 1300s. I've got a book on that somewhere. I would not have gotten rid of that. Where is it? It was hiding. Yeah, this book was really fascinating. First of all, great title. Richard Peck. Now, my brother has spoken highly of this author. They've interacted, I know. One time he really came home from a trip with a bunch of Richard Peck stuff. They had interacted. This guy's great. Oh. Wow, what a dark topic for a book. Frank novel about the nightmare of rape and its aftermath. Wonder if my channel has been demonetized by me just not shying away from words sometimes. Oh well, it kind of bums me out to hear people self-censor chasing that dollar. Sounds like one of those two real books parents should keep around for their kids to possibly read. Best book of the year. What year would you think this paperback is? 80s? 1977 printing. What's this one about? Rock climbing? The Alps. It's a good topic. I love that James Salter book, Solo Faces. Oh, here's a classic. Here's a beautiful paperback edition of it. Painted edges, love it. Pretty color. Newbery Award-winning classic. This is one of those books that young men and young women all just freaking love. My kid's mom, my first wife, grew up obsessed with this book. I think ran away from home at times because of this book. It really gets to people. I remember reading it, and there was a sequel too that I liked. This guy's written a number of good books, important books with big topics. And this has a historical basis. Also wrote a book about the Long Walk called Sing Down the Moon. All my kids really care about the Long Walk growing up. It's good considering that we live in New Mexico. They should have an awareness of that. Haunting and unusual story based on the fact that in the early 1800s, an Indian girl spent 18 years alone on a rocky island far off the coast of California. Starred Review, Live Rage. The book that affected me like this, and maybe this shows, conforming to gender norms or whatever, was My Side of the Mountain. Peak of the Devil. There it is. And I did watch the movie a lot too, which was a 60s psychedelic, dissolve-rich trip in its way. And there's something kind of mythic and fable-like in how his family just lets him run away from home when he's really young and go live in the mountains. Okay. Apartment's too crowded anyway. He lives in a hollow tree, and he trains a falcon that he rescues, and he has a raccoon friend, and this was my blueprint for life when I was a kid. I read this book so many times. Even this movie edition of it seems kind of quaint now, huh? It's classic. Story of a modern, and it's like, it has high stakes, and he makes great friends. There's this old trapper fella. There's a young couple that comes up and cares about his fate. There's a marten. You remember all the animals too. It's just like it is the kind of experience that would really appeal. Yeah. Books of my childhood. Robinson Crusoe, My Side of the Mountain, and Island of the Blue Dolphins. I did read this too and liked it. And I recall a really cool one he wrote about the Aztec Mayan peoples. It was awesome. It's funny, I find myself reaching to this hyperbolic stuff, but I have these childhood memories of it when I was like, love this. This too. I was so into James Herriot when he and Oliver Sacks have a similar prototype. Each chapter is a case. I read James Herriot first, and when I got to Oliver Sacks, I was like, oh, I remember, this is familiar. Oh, look at that beautiful cat. Tadota. Probably wondering, why is he talking to himself? He appears to be going crazy. Maybe he's talking to that brick. But, I remember these all being very emotionally involving. Yeah, where does the book fit like this? This is a true memoir written for all ages in an artful way. And while these may sound very Christian-y, and there are undertones of that throughout, I do not remember that at all. I remember animals, amazing rescues and saves, touching animal stories. This warm, joyous, and often hilarious first-person chronicle of a young animal doctor shines a light of light. Yeah, it's like a nonfiction Dr. Dolittle. And I loved the Dr. Dolittle books when I was a kid. And none of my kids really ever took to them, though I did read pretty much most of the series to my oldest kids at least once. We held on to most of, or maybe even any of those. I think we let them go on. It's crazy. The first one you have to skip like a few chapters for the extreme racist motifs. I mean, like Dr. Doolittle's all, I can cure this chief's blackness. But, there were a bunch of books in this series. This is the only one I hung on to. If anybody ever reads this one, then we can get the others, yeah. I think that's how it is with series that have gone fallow for you, like that was from a part of my life. But why not read it sometime? I bet I would enjoy it. Or this would be like an ideal audiobook for a long trip because the stories are great. This one does not have to go in the kids section. This could go in the nonfiction section, I suppose. Can't really say. It's a 90 edition. It's kind of nice. It's not really a paperback. It's a little secret hardcover. This one I bought recently and I don't buy many books for younger readers anymore these days. Though I do want to get Willow a nice Hunger Games box set with all 5 now. A pretty cool one. But Enid Blyton, she's great. I was just talking about the Famous 5 in another video, looking at the Famous 5 on an island or whatever. Look at that cover. That's great. It's like, hey, this is just a chapter book for young readers who like a little bit of adventure, and it fires their imagination. Why shouldn't it look beautiful? Be a nice part of a home. It's great. I've displayed this once before, just propping it up. Yeah, that's crazy. I bought this like recently. I'm just an aesthetic freak. Puritan stuff is really interesting to me because I'm not even kidding. That's like all my ancestors on one side of my family. Like, I can't believe how many ancestors I have right on the edge of Salem witch trials. like several of my ancestors signed this petition to save Mary Bradbury, like not just relatives, but like direct ancestors. The brother of an ancestor, so the descendant of two other ancestors, was one of the accusers in a different instance and resulted in someone getting hanged. Eesh. But my ancestors were all over the founding of the city of Salisbury, Massachusetts, and a lot of early Boston history. For instance, one of my ancestors helped co-found the first Christian church in Cambridge, Massachusetts. That's crazy. But I'm guessing this ties in. I've read this a long time ago. I'm guessing this ties in with the witch trials. I read the first couple chapters to my daughter Sonora one time, but I don't think we ever finished it. I know I read it as a kid though. Won the Newbery Award. It's cool. I like books that help young people understand and remember historical events like this. Oh, this is great. This is Wilson Rawls' second best known book after Where the Red Fern Grows. Those are really his two books for younger readers. I heard he had a bunch more that he burned for being too samey. A big fiery ritualistic bonfire. It's kind of like a happier Where the Red Fern Grows, a little lighter. Still got high stakes and so on. And I loved it as a kid. I read this and Where the Red Fern Grows over and over again, even though like Where the Red Fern Grows is real torment. It made me cry every time I read it, like a lot. Like, why do I read this? I love these dogs. This one has to do with a wrecked boxcar full of circus monkeys and a reward for their capture in the Ozarks. It's a very similar setup to Where the Red Fern Grows with the boy and his two dogs, but a different sort of story. He's like Ruth Chew in that way. Like, this is my scenario. Well, I remember it fondly. Glad I still have a copy. I don't think I currently have Where the Red Fern Grows, which I would like. I think if I'm going to have a kids collection for the youth, I suppose I should have that one. I'd grab it if I saw it. Both of these books, the last two of these trade size paperbacks, I have personal stories for, maybe which I've repeated before. But this was given to me by one of my coolest friends of my young youth. When I was in second grade, I rode the bus with this girl who was in third grade, Christina, and she was the only person I knew who just really swore like crazy, and she was really funny and smart and hung out with me. And she gave me this on my birthday one time. She's all, I know it seems like it's not new, but this is one of my favorite books. It's so good. And I loved it. It's two books put together. It's Grimble and Grimble at Christmas. But it's about this kid that just gets left at home by his negligent parents, but they always leave notes for him to go to different people to set things up with. And it's just a series of misadventures, every one of these places he has to go. I loved this book. I laughed so much. There's just kind of nothing else like it. Who is Clement Freud? Are there more books like this? Are there many Grimble books? Oh, and Quentin Blake of Roald Dahl's books fame. But Christina gave me that when I was in second grade, and I loved it. And then when I became a dad, I read this to my kids, and they read it on their own, and they all loved it. My daughter Anna was like addicted to this book for a while. She read it over and over again, I remember, for a while. It became like a comfort read for her. I think it had been one for me too, but it's crazy. Crazy to think of an old friend from a long time ago. But fact is, people are cool. You remember them, Like I said, when I was writing about that time of my life, I looked Christina up one time, and apparently she's like an accomplished academic on the East Coast now. Crazy. This book, I can never get rid of this book. This copy of this book. This is an amazing book. I grew up loving the book Rascal by Sterling North. Not this copy, though. This copy I got when my kids were little from a free pile. And I think... or it could have come from Don's Paperback Books. But no, I think it was a free pile at UNM in a building that's since been torn down. But someone named Mark Groman wrote his name throughout. And on this page he wrote, Mark Groman, go no farther. Maybe they were reading it together and he was signing the page or telling his friend where to read to. But there are a lot of Mark Gromans in this book. And so when I would read this book to my kids, which was already an amazing book. I mean, it's a true story, another memoir of a kid during World War I. His brother's away fighting. He's kind of left to run in this house overrun with animals, like on his own. His sisters don't live there. It's just him and his dad. His dad's busy with work. He's building a canoe in the living room, and it's just like very informal. It's too cute, but who sits like that? What? Have some decency, man. You think you're a daughter. But he has this pet raccoon, that he raises from a baby. And it's just such an interesting, great personality. Maybe this book is like that, but about an owl. And I love the story of Rascal. The movie is an abomination. It's one of the worst adaptations. I mean, it's unreal. They just took the idea of a boy and a raccoon. Ugh. Fortunately, it's also very hard to find. Stumbled across a copy on VHS once. We got it, watched it once. Ugh. But so when I read this book to my kids, every time I got to Mark Groman written in there, I would read the Mark Groman, and I would also add additional Mark Gromans. And my kids thought it was the most hilarious thing, and it became just this verbal tick that was in all of our conversations. Mark Groman, Mark Groman. How you doing, Mark Groman? It was great. So I got to keep this copy forever. I think Anodyne talked about this a little in the video that she recorded with me. Keep it even. This cover's got some weird, nasty mark on it. We're 1 million copies in print. Okay, I guess I'm not alone. I'm saying this is a good book. Beloved classic of boyhood, nature, and being alive. Yeah, say youth, nature, and being alive. Everyone can read it. Well, that would be pretty wild if one of you out there have already read all of these. I read all of this. I mean, I haven't read all of them. There's 3 I haven't read. All the way through. 4 maybe. Say 5. But anyway. Yeah, these are all good. If you have young people in your lives, definitely build a collection, you know? Maybe that's who videos like these could be for. People just looking around, you know, I got a young kid. What should I have on the shelves for them to have around as they grow up? What should I keep my eye open for? Here's me saying, here's some stuff. And who doesn't love a theme? Like trade-size paperbacks. There's an imposter in their midst. Now, I don't normally make the books fight for my amusement because I'm not cruel. But there's some very good books here, and there's some very good covers here. I think that 5 we're missing is good. Especially because I don't think that's a movie tie-in. They just took this creepy photo. That one's great. In the middle. It's great in its way. What was that? This is that, though. What a dark topic. Wow. These are all kind of classic in their way. This has been a stack of trade-size paperbacks for younger readers. See by Prisma and Squirrel. Also Sweepy. Very cute kitty. How are you? Who are you? Well, never forget our channel's motto. Books are just waiting for you to let your guard down. Then they'll get you.